everyone. I think we are ready to get started. I hope the people who wanted the links have managed to get them. If anyone has any issues connecting, please feel free to just add on the chat and we'll try to attend to that. But I think Peter has shared the links, so let's share them. We're also live on Facebook, so hopefully everybody's able to connect with us. Right? So anyway, a very warm welcome to everyone. Exciting times we're living in. Exciting because the World Cup is taking place at the very same time. And I know feelings are everywhere, but there's always hope. Hey, Ghana, don't give up. There's always hope. My name is Pamela Chikoore. I'm your moderator for tonight. I'm the co-moderator for tonight. I am going to moderate for the first hour, and then I'll pass on to Fanele after I'm done. So on behalf of Millennials Voice Africa, I just want to welcome everyone to the third edition of the African Millennials Dialogue. What an exciting time to be alive. What an exciting time to be able to make a difference and make a change. So somebody's going to say, but Pam, how can you say it's an exciting time? There's so much happening in the world, things going up, things going down, chaos. But let me tell you something that I've learned, is that whenever there's chaos, there's opportunity. Whenever there's shaking, there's opportunity. Whenever things don't look like they should look, there are opportunities. When things are disturbing, there are opportunities. So we're living in a season of opportunity. I don't care how bleak it looks, it's always an opportunity. So I just want to welcome everyone. It's an exciting, exciting time. And what a privilege and honor it is for every single person on this platform to be here and to be able to discuss issues that just do not affect us, but they're going to affect generations to come. To be able to discuss the discourse of where Africa is going, to be able to discuss how we position ourselves in the current environment. So you're privileged to be here. But let's set this straight. This is just not any other meeting. So there are many meetings that take place, many dialogues, many webinars, so many things that take place. And people have discussed for time immemorial about these issues and those issues. But this meeting has got to be different. And I just want to call upon everyone to look at it differently. We don't want to just discuss. We want to discuss, but come out of here with an undertaking of what we are going to do individually and corporately. I think we're not in a time where we can let somebody else take on the baton and run with it. And we come back next year and say, have you done it? I think Africa now is in a position where everyone has got to take their stand. If we're going to make a difference, we all have to take an undertaking. So I hope you're joining me on this journey as we take an undertaking to make a difference in Africa, to make a difference not just for us, because we're not even a fraction of African youth. There are so many people out there, and we have the privilege of coming together and discuss these issues. So as we discuss, please take an undertaking, write down what you are personally going to do. And when we come back around the table next year, let's be able to say, I did this, I made this change, I did this. Because we've spoken for so long, it's time to take action. It's time to deliberate and work. So I hope you're joining me with this. And I'm excited, I'm super excited because we've got an exciting lineup of speakers tonight. But before I get there, just a couple of housekeeping issues. I'll request that if possible, if you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself so that we're able to hear whoever is speaking. We are going to have a question and answer session later. So if you've got any questions or anything you'd like to discuss, just jot it down. Later in the program, you'll be able to ask the questions and we'll be able to get into whatever it is that you'd like to discuss. So as I said before, on behalf of Millennial Voice Africa, I want to welcome you all. So Millennial Voice Africa is a Pan-African movement that was set up to empower young African. And it's the belief that young Africans have the potential to change Africa. They don't just have the potential, they also have the opportunity. So it's not just about potential, it's potential and opportunity. So according to statistics, in 2021, there were just under 400 million young people between the ages of 11 and 24 in Africa. However, we all know Africa, when we speak about youth, we have to stretch our age group to about 35 years. And that's because of the factors that we face as Africans. And those are some of the barriers that we're going to discuss tonight. Those barriers that make us stretch our age group to 35 years. But as we discuss tonight, I want us to be cognizant of something. In as much as we all look the same, we sound the same. And they say our names sound foreign and are hard to pronounce. But we're so different. We've got different religions, different traditions, different educational backgrounds, different norms. Some are male, some are female, some don't want to be identified with gender. So in our differences, we have an opportunity to come together and have solutions that will help all of us. So as the panelists and the speakers speak, let's just be cognizant of we are different, but we are one. I like what they say. They say you can take an African out of Africa, but you can never take Africa out of an African. So we've got a thread that joins all of us together, but we also have differences and we have barriers that we must break if we're to make a change. So anyway, I just want to take this opportunity just to introduce our speakers for tonight. I'll just introduce them. They'll all have an individual opportunity to speak to us, but I'll go through the list of speakers we have tonight. With us tonight is Gloria Anderson, the Executive Director of Tanzania Enlightenment Initiative. We also, okay, so before I go any further, if I mispronounce the name, we also have Samuel Bache from YAPCEC, Cameroon. We have Anastasse Ndagijiana from Bache, Rwanda, the Executive Director. We also have Grace Waswa, but Grace has sent through a video to us, so we're going to be able to, she's going to be able to speak to us via the video. And we also have Peter Kwadwo Asare Nyarko from Ghana. So those are our speakers for tonight. We do have a keynote speaker. My co-moderator is going to introduce the speaker to us. So without going too far, I'd like us to get to the panelists. I think Gloria is with us tonight. Gloria, are you there? You can unmute yourself. Hello, Gloria.
Hello.
You are very welcome. We're excited to have you with us tonight, and we can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. I'm just going to start off by asking you a question, and then you can take it on from there. How can young Africans break the barrier of education? I think education is one of the key barriers we face. So with your experience and what you've seen, how do you think young Africans can break this barrier?
Wow. Thank you so much, Pamela, and the Millennial Voices Africa team, all the partners, Mr. Valentino Sabuko and the rest who have made this possible. And also, I'd like to thank everyone who has been supporting the platform from time to time. I'm very humbled to be given an opportunity, be among the speakers, and also sharing what I'm thinking and regarding education, youth development in Africa as part of Millennials Dialogue. Well, I had prepared something. Let me try to share my screen. So my discussion will have, let me see, regarding what barriers we have in the education space, and how can youth take advantage of the barriers to come up with different initiatives that will improve the education sector, but also the youth sector. Wow. Please let me know, Pamela, if my screen is.
I think we are there now. We can see your screen. Yes.
Oh, you can see my screen. Okay, great. Thank you.
You can
All right. So I'm Gloria Anderson. I'm the founder and the director of Tanzania Enlightenment Development Innovation. Basically, I really like to introduce myself as education development practitioner, because I think the education space is very big, and as an organization, we are not even touching a quarter or half of what is really needed to be done in the education space in the 21st century era. What we do in the organization, and the fact that I'm really fostering, is the improvement of the quality of education by looking at how are we integrating different practical aspects into the education sector, so that we can have a competitive young generation of different professions who will be able to to be competitive in the world, in different sectors, but in the world level, global level. Because over time, education curriculum and education systems in Africa have been very outdated. So what we do as an organization, we have the number of programs, from computer labs, digital literacy projects, which under it we find a program like computer lab establishments, e-learning and e-teaching capacity workshop program for teachers and students. But also we go into e-learning platform installment of the computers, so that students can have an understanding of what it takes to be in the digital era in the education space. But also we have programs on financial literacy and entrepreneurship, in which we prepare young people into understanding how they can tap into entrepreneurship, and also have awareness of financial literacy from a younger age. This goes across from students from primary school, 11 years, 12 years, up to higher learning institution. So when we are looking at how can young people fight or remove the barrier or mitigate barriers in the education sector, first we have to understand what kind of the barriers do we have in the education sector. So the major barriers that we have in the education sector are issues relating to quality of education. We are in the era whereby we are moving from fighting on the access of education. Although in Africa, access of education is still a challenge, but now the access of education as a challenge has been embodied with equality, because it's not only about the access to education anymore, but it's also about the content of the education that we're receiving. So quality becomes a number one barrier for me. Poverty as well, because education sector itself, for it to be successful and prosperous, it demands resources. And if we do not have enough resources, including the financial resources, into improving the sector, in which these are called by poverty, are caused the lack of the financial enough financial resources is caused by poverty state in most of the African countries becomes a major barrier as well. Challenging to geographies, geographical challenges, conflict, insecurity, and instability, especially for countries that are unstable in sense of are having issues relating to wars and endless conflicts. Refugees as well, as we know that most of the refugees are not having are fully access to education and also to the quality education. Gender issues, as we all know, I won't touch. I will only touch the barrier relating to quality, and the rest maybe we can have sometimes so we can discuss on them some other time. Infrastructure and also resources. So I will touch more on the quality. When we speak of quality education, what are we really looking at? Because understanding the concept in a wider perspective will allow us as young African leaders to see what kind of initiatives can be done or we can do or tap ourselves into, so that coming next year, our dialogue would have a different discussion. When Pamela was doing opening remarks, she said that next year we are going to, to analyze ourselves. What have we done? So speaking the angle of quality education, issues that are embodying themselves into all aspects of quality education, we're looking at issues at enabling policy environment. What kind of policies do we have as countries, as sectors that supports the access to quality education? We look at issues of national debate. Do we have a national conversations that are really hitting on the issues of quality education in our countries? Teachers development and in incentives. What kind of programs do we have, or as countries, what kind of policies are there in place that support development of teachers, but also in terms of their incentives? What kind of policies do we have in terms of head teacher trainings? Because from 2019, I started working with TEDI, and through partnering with different schools, especially the public schools that are found in low resource areas, I have found that we have teachers, but the presence of head teachers is something different. And most of the head teachers needs to have not only the teaching understanding and the professionalism, but also the administration and the developmental aspect of how they can run these schools. I'll give you an example. We are having a project at Mkuranga district. It's a district found in Pwani region. It's a district that is dominated more of the coastal people, and to them, issues like education are not given like a higher priority, because like young girls will get married at a younger age, and young men as well wouldn't prefer to go to higher learning institution. They would prefer maybe to just finish their secondary education and do some 1 or 2 activities, or maybe a little bit of agriculture and so it has been very difficult to install the mindset of digital literacy learning, entrepreneurship, financial literacy to this group. But I'll give you a testimony of a head teacher in Kisemvule Primary School. This teacher does not have only the teaching technicalities, but also the developmental mindset, and also like the vision for the school. She is having the vision for the school. So she told me, like, Gloria, I want children who are completing standard 7 from my school to be different young people in this community. She's fostering this program. She's also looking for funds so that our programs can also be done in the school. So you can see if we can also have like, 1,000 teachers of a similar mindset, what kind of a generation are we really going to have in the next 1 or 2 years? Assessment, monitoring, and evaluation. It's very important in looking at policy environment in our countries. Most of the policies that have been set, young leaders are not included because maybe most of the young leaders are not members of parliament in our countries, so they are not being included in the setting of these policies. But also they are not close to the ministries of education or institutions that are working into setting policies that are relating to quality education in our countries. So it's high time for young leaders to look at into how are we going to assess the policies, question the leaders, like why do we have this kind of policies? These policies have been there for some certain years. What impact do they have? What impact are they brought in our education sector? If not, why don't we remove them? Looking at issues of relevant and inclusive curriculum. Do we have relevant curriculum as per 21st century? We do not have. Last time I checked, the curriculum of education in Tanzania is very, I would say, is in a quality state in terms of the content, but it's lacking a lot of marks in terms of implementation. Most of the things that have been mentioned in the curriculum are not being implemented. We need to question these ministries. We need to be part of the generation of young leaders that will question and see and provide relevant comments on the content that we really want to be included into education curricula. Because if we, like the way we are today, it's because of the things that have been fed into our minds. So if the coming generation is not fed with the correct content from the education sector, then we will have a lot of challenges in acquiring quality education state, but also developing our communities and countries. Textbook procurement and distribution is also one of the policy content that has to be looked by young African leaders who really want to change their countries in terms of quality education. I think there is some background.
Sorry, Gloria, to intercept. I'm just going to ask everyone to mute. Sorry, there was a bit of background there. You can go ahead, Gloria. I'll give you a minute to finish the presentation, and then I'll just have one quick question, then we'll move on.
Okay, all right. So we're looking at issues on targeted financial support for schools. It's also among the policy aspect that really have to be looked into. But also, it doesn't end there. What about school environment? Are the school environment enabling the access to quality education? Looking at school-based professional development, self-evaluation, infrastructures and resources, structured and inclusive pedagogy. These are the things that we need to look at. Like if you just look at the image I'm showcasing right now, you can find there are a lot of projects young people can tap into. You cannot tap into everything, but maybe you can tap into policy environment. Maybe you can tap into improving school environment. What about enabling home and community environment? During COVID-19 pandemic issue, we realized most of the students were learning from like their families. How many parents were able to teach their kids? So this is also another aspect when we look at quality education that young people can also look into. How are we improving the school governance systems, and also issues of meals and child health? How are we preparing young people from the primary school ages into understanding the importance of agriculture, understanding the importance of businesses, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, all the mindset, because these are what these are the aspects that are lacking in the older, I would say, in the older young age levels. And that's why we are having a lot of issues relating to youth unemployment, because we were not prepared into that. So there is a demand for young leaders across the continent, from their local communities together with government to ensure the reflection of education upon its relevance to the modern world. And education is expected to contribute to addressing sustainable human development, peace and security, universal values, informed decision-making, and the quality of life and the individual, family, societal, and lastly, the global levels. So that marks the end of my presentation. I welcome question and concern, contribution, whatsoever you have in mind regarding how young people can mitigate the barriers in the education sector as we are looking for a prosperous Africa. Thank you so much.
Hello. I think
Yes.
we lost Pamela. Okay, Pamela is back. Hello, Pamela.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, I also lost my network. I've just had a power outage. I'm back. My apologies for that. Is Gloria back?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, my network is acting up. Gloria, I just had one quick question for you. I think you spoke, thank you so much for the presentation, very enlightening, and I think a lot of us benefited from it. I just have one question about the curriculum. You spoke a lot about quality. What have we done to make young people aware of the rights they have in terms of the quality of education they should have access to? I mean, we know we should have quality education, but in terms of awareness, how much has been done to make sure that young people are aware of what it is they're entitled
to? Well, thank you so much for bringing that up. From when I started working in this sector, I realized two things. One, I'll speak of my country because that's where I'm having enough experience, I would say, rather than other African countries. And also you can relate to your countries as well if you're facing a similar matter. Most of young Africans leaders ignored the issues related to education and thought it's one of those issues that needs to be dealt with professors, doctors, education practitioners who are really in the sector, and not necessarily looking at it from a developmental point of view. Why am I saying this? If you look at most of the agendas that were being raised by even members of parliament of our countries, like some, 20 years back, they were not really touching on issues of the content of education. They would really touch on issues of infrastructures, making sure we have classes, making sure we have, toilets, making sure we have enough teachers, which are a very good aspect. It's very important to have infrastructures. It's very important to have enough teachers and ensure that they are having, enough incentive to teach well. But if the food you're getting does not have the nutrients, it doesn't matter the content of the food, like the quantity of the food you're getting. If it doesn't have enough nutrients, to make yourself healthy, then you won't be healthy, even if you ate in a very, big house or a very precious plate. What am I trying to say? We may have nice classrooms, which is okay, and I really pioneer that. But if the content of what we are being feeding or of what we are feeding these students is not relevant, we will always have the issues of youth unemployment. So right now, I would say as far as my country is concerned, I have seen a lot of changes from last year where the ministers of education had called for bigger workshops for discussion of the relevance of education curriculum, and a lot of comments were being given by over 1,000, education practitioners from the country, from the younger generation to the old generation. And currently, like Tanzania Education Institution, plus the ministry, plus other governmental institutions are working on how we can come up with a new education curriculum, in which now, again, our government, we hope that it's something that will really work and do not end only on papers. But then we cannot wait on government. What can we do? As young leaders, from our personal initiatives, let's show them. For instance, I'll give you an example of our computer lab project. It doesn't, in the curriculum of education of Tanzania, it says students should learn how to use computers in their learning processes, but it's not implemented. But now, since there are organizations like us who have been, pioneering on computer labs, you see the government is also doing the same, which is very good. So sometimes it's not about waiting on what they are doing, but we should also show them what has to be done, and then they can take it up from there. It's going to be a process. It's not going to be something that will turn up in 2 years or 3 years, but over the process, the steps that we are taking will bring us a lot of impact in the long run. That's what I believe. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I think there's some takers that you gave us there. I think we all have a role to play. I think awareness is critical, and we'll probably get into a question and answer session where we'll discuss this further. I just want us to quickly move to the next speaker. Anastasse, if you're there, I'll just introduce you again, the Executive Director of We Got Your Back in Rwanda. So you can unmute yourself. A very warm welcome to this exciting discussion. And as we start off with you, I just have I'll start off with this. Diversity, gender, inclusiveness. How important should this be to young Africans? How important is gender, inclusivity, and just diversity? How do we put it all together, and why is it important to us as Africans? I'll just give you 5 minutes to go through your presentation, and then we'll get into a question for you. So Anastasse, are you there?
Yes.
You can go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Pamela, the moderator, and a round of applause to Gloria for the wonderful presentation. 5 minute time is a short time, but I will do my best, to keep myself brief so I can maybe share. So mine, I won't be exploring a lot more because a 5 minute time is very, very short. But I want first to for us to understand what is diversity, inclusiveness, and gender in general, so that we can come up with an overview of what we're going to talk about and why it is important for the young Africans. First, these two terms, diversity and inclusion or inclusiveness, have been used interchangeably, sometimes being confused. So let's now look at one term at one, and then we get to understand what they mean, then why they are important to young Africans. First, diversity is any dimension that can be used to differentiate groups and people from one another. In a nutshell, it's about empowering people by respecting and appreciating what makes them different in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, education, and national origin. Diversity generally is understanding one another. Diversity actually allows us for exploring the differences in a safe, positive, and nurturing environment. This means understanding one another by surpassing simple tolerance to ensure people truly value their differences. It also allows us both to embrace, also to celebrate the rich dimensions of diversity contained within each individual and place a positive value on the diversity in the community and in the workplace. Lastly, diversity is also recognized or can help us to recognize our differences. Each individual, like in our organizations, in different platforms we belong to, may bring with them a diverse set of perspectives, work experience, life experience, as well as religious and cultural differences. So the power of diversity can only be unleashed, and its benefits are reaped when we recognize these differences and learn to respect and value each individual irrespective of their background. So some people have been wondering why diversity is important. Maybe let me talk about this before I jump to the inclusiveness and gender. Diversity contributes to personal growth. It also leads to higher rates of productivity and performance. But most importantly, diversity drives creativity and innovation everywhere we are. Every culture, every nationality, and every single person sees the world in a different way. Similarly, every culture, nationality, or a person has different knowledge, perspectives, and points of view. When all these different views are shared together or are brought together, a lot of amazing things can happen. So maybe I can talk about inclusion before I jump to the gender, then say why they are important to young Africans, not only for young Africans, but for every individual. Inclusiveness, which differs a bit from diversity, this means appreciating our differences or welcoming everyone's uniqueness. In brief, inclusiveness is the quality of including many different types of people and treating them all fairly and equally. Inclusion is about making sure that the marginalized members of society, for instance, people with disabilities or special needs and minority groups, are not only told they are included, but also feel like they are. We can say to people that you are welcome and included, but sometimes they don't feel okay because of different issues they are facing. So inclusion might be an organizational effort and practice in which different groups or individuals having different backgrounds are culturally and socially accepted and welcomed. These differences could be self-evident, such as national origin, age, race, and ethnicity, religion, gender, marital status, and socioeconomic status, or they could be more enhanced, such as educational background, training, sector experience, organizational tenure, even personality such as introverts or extroverts. Like personally, I'm somehow introverts. And then to conclude about inclusiveness, let me say that inclusion is all about sense of belonging. When we talk about inclusion or inclusiveness, inclusive culture should make people feel respected and valued for who they are as individuals or in groups. people feel a level of supportive energy and commitment from others so that they can do their best at work, at home, in the community, everywhere. Inclusion often means a shift in an organization's mindset, individuals' mindset, and the culture that has visible effects, such as participation in meetings, how offices are physically organized, and again, talking about education, how school environment is arranged and modified to fit in with students with disabilities, or access to particular facilities or information. The process of inclusion can engage each individual and make everyone feel valued as being essential to the success of the organization, schools, or any community group. Evidence generally shows that when people feel valued, they function at a full capacity and feel part of the team's mission. This culture shift creates higher performing organizations where motivation and morale soar. Lastly, in simple terms, diversity and inclusion, as sometimes they are used interchangeably. Diversity is the mix, when you mix things together, and inclusion is getting the mix to work very well and effectively together. So then, why inclusion is very important? Inclusion comprehends people's involvement and empowerment. When people are included, their worth is recognized and respected. Employees or anyone at any place are their best when they are own authentic selves. To be one's authentic self, one must feel included. That's why inclusion is very important. And then the last point about gender, this is a very, very huge topic, which can even take us like a whole day talking about, because it has so many things that it is associated with. But let me generally say that gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. This also differs from sex, as some people are not able to differentiate gender from sex. This includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being woman, man, girl, or boy, as well as the relationship with each other. As a social construct, gender varies from society to society and can change over time. So I've realized that we have the main types of gender, which are four. Sometimes people can even come up with other different ones that are not globally conventional, but here we got four, which is masculine, feminine, common, and neutral. So all these are the types of gender each individual can identify themselves as they belong to. So gender generally is hierarchical and produces inequalities that intersect with other social and economic inequalities. And there is a current trend specifically to the gender-based violence or gender-based discrimination, which intersects with other factors of discrimination, such as ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, as I mentioned above, age, geographical location, gender identity, and sexual orientation, among others. This is referred to as intersectionality in other ways. Gender interacts with, but is different from sex, as I said, which refers to the different biological and physiological characteristics of females, male and intersex persons, such as chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive organs. Gender and sex are related to, but different from gender identity. Gender identity refers to a person's deeply felt internal individual experiences of gender, which may or may not correspond to the person's physiological sex at birth. As I conclude, the importance of gender can be seen in a mirror of making it a very important consideration in development for every individual, in every organization, in every society, in every country, and the worldwide. It is a way of looking at how social norms and power structure impacts on their lives and opportunities available to different groups of men and women. And it has proven that in statistics globally, more women than men live in a poor condition, which makes gender an important consideration in socioeconomic development. Why is diversity, inclusion, and gender important to young Africans, to people in general? It's because we cannot live a life without differences. We cannot be happy when we don't have someone to learn from. And when we have people with much more experience than us, that means we have a diversity. When people are different from others, we have to enjoy that, because we cannot be able to feel a sense of belonging when we don't see any difference that is willing to accept our difference and diversity. So these two important terms are very, very essential and critical to human existence, because if we consider this, that is the only way we're going to live a happy life and a more sustainable living condition that welcomes, that values each and every individual, regardless of where they come from, their knowledge, their economic status, or how they physically appear, how they talk, where they want their life to be located, or where they are directing their lives. So it all means that we have to value each and everyone, regardless of who they think they are. So maybe my 5-minute time might be over, but I will be able and happy to welcome any questions and looking forward to an interactive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the message, for just inspiring us. I mean, diversity, it takes our differences to bring us together. So I mean, I'm inspired. I just have one quick question. If you were to get 1 minute with African president, what policy would you push for African youth? What would you say? I have 1 minute. I would say, let's go for this in the next year or 5 years. What one policy do you think is on top of your list in terms of everything you've spoken about? You have 1 minute to speak to African leaders. What agenda would you push? Are you with me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
That's very tough. But if I was to speak to African leaders in 1 minute, the first and foremost agenda that I will put into a consideration and on a high spotlight is gender, because it's not because I'm passionate about gender equality, but when we look at people, especially women and men, as people who can do amazing things together, regardless of their contribution. But whatever they are contributing means a lot to socioeconomic development. I would outspokenly speak to the African leaders that they should put into a high consideration of gender equality. So, and I'm speaking to this, looking at how teenage pregnancy and sexual gender-based violence is increasing day by day because of lack of gender policies, efficient means of integrating women in socioeconomic activities, excluding girls from educational sector, just considering them as people with no potentials. So if I was to speak to African leaders, I would definitely emphasize that they put a high consideration of gender and making sure that each and every organization, institution, private and public sector, they put a high consideration of gender and making sure that there is a closed gap of gender pay gap, which is now an issue being seen and observed around the world where you have men and women doing same work, no, but not being paid equal amount of money. So I will definitely say that and emphasize it strongly so they can put it into a high consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. So, I mean, I think the homework that we take with us is that issues of gender are never overrated. They've spoken about it a lot, but I think from this presentation, it's clear that it's not overrated. There's still so much that needs to be done. So thank you so much for that insight. I'll quickly move on to Samuel. Samuel, I hope you're there with us. Samuel is the director of YAPCEC in Cameroon. So you're very welcome, sir, to this dialogue. I will start with a question for you as well. I think, you know, issues of peace and security are critical. How can young people be influential in ensuring peace and security in their country? Because it's one of those things that we thought by now we're past issues of wars and stuff like that. But I think we have since found out that it's very easy to go back to war. So, I mean, how do you think young people should be influential in issues of peace and security, and how do we break those barriers? So, Samuel, you can unmute yourself and welcome to the platform. Is Samuel with us?
I think Samuel is not in our midst at the moment.
Okay, which is fine. So maybe what we can move on to is the video. I think we've got a video that was shared by Grace Waswa. So we'll watch her presentation on video and take it from there.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. You can start playing it.
To be speaking at the
Can you hear the audio?
Millennials Dialogue this year.
Yes, we can hear.
I had the pleasure of honored
All right,
to be speaking at the African Millennials Dialogue this year. I had the pleasure of speaking in the dialogue last year, and every year it's such a brilliant conversation that's going on, and it's such a beautiful time to talk with and to the most brilliant young minds that we have here in Africa. My name is Grace Nekesa Waswa. I am from Kenya. I am a youth advocate, a lawyer, and the founder of Vijana Tupo initiative. And I'm honored and excited to be talking to you today. My conversation today is about young people taking up opportunities, the opportunities that are present, and how young people can take up these opportunities. I'd like to start by saying that opportunities are always present. Even in the adversity that we have faced as a continent, there is always a silver lining. COVID-19 came and it brought a lot of challenges to our economies. Our economies were greatly challenged, and we saw an influx of unemployment, an influx of rise in depression, and different things that came about with the challenges of lack of money, if I may outrightly put it out. There is no money, and poverty levels were rising, and the many challenges that we all must know. Currently, as a continent, we're still faced with different challenges, especially as the East African community. We are faced with the issue of drought. A lot of our brothers and sisters in the northern parts of East Africa, the northern parts of our country, the Horn of Africa, are facing a serious drought. And this is something that really is so sad. And so our continent is going through quite a number of challenges. We've also seen a number of coups that have been happening, I think, in Central Africa, a number of coup d'etats, and so we've been through it. We've been through it, and I am certain there is a silver lining in all of it. even with the challenges that we have faced as a continent, it is very clear that we have young and brilliant people that are ready to take up positions of power and to run with solutions, run and lead with these solutions and transform our continent as we should, right? So the opportunities are present, the opportunities to solve these challenges, the opportunities to innovate for these challenges, innovate for the hunger and drought situation, and not just innovate, speak up for these situations, innovate for the health crisis, innovate for the education crisis that we are having in our continent. We also have a myriad of opportunities in technology. In Kenya, we are now embracing the new term called we're being called the Silicon Savannah, because a lot of startups are coming up, and it's a technological based startups. Young people are coming up with so many brilliant ideas to solve a lot of things with technology. That is also a branch or an area in which young people can see opportunity present. And you don't have to think of technology as this, coding and all this. Even me, I don't know technology well. Let me just be honest. Technology is as simple as us having this conversation on Zoom, leveraging the opportunities that are present for us to have this conversation on Zoom. I did my pre-recording because of technology. It has enabled me to pre-record and then have this played.
But we can still hear. We can still hear it clearly.
Content creation, which is a major part of technology. And so just looking at the different things that are present and then being creative, right? Being creative with these things is something that we young people need to learn. We cannot just sit in a box. We cannot just go with the flow. One challenge I'd like to give you as a young person is not to settle with the status quo. The status quo of employment, the status quo of leadership, the status quo of what is happening. Be brave enough to think outside the box. Be brave enough to see things differently. And you will only see things differently if you associate with people that see things differently. You will only see things differently if you listen to people that see things differently. One quote that I love saying is that if you keep doing things the same way, you will still keep getting the same results. If as young people we have been looking for opportunities in the same way for the past years that we have existed, honestly, we're still going to be getting the same results as we have been getting. It's time for you to challenge yourself as a young person. It's time
Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Hi, we post the videos.
We have an intruder. Someone is trying to.
Okay, I think we can then proceed. We can proceed. I think we sort of got a gist of what she was trying to drive across. I think one critical thing she spoke about was the opportunities that are always there. And the question being, what are we doing about the opportunities that we have? She spoke about innovation. I think it's one critical thing that as Africans, we really need to start thinking of what we're doing in the innovation space. And I think sometimes when you think about innovation, we think of scientists and all that, but every sector we have requires some form of innovation. So I think the ball is in our court to take that on and ask ourselves what we're doing regarding innovation and how we're moving forward in that respect. So thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that with us. I don't know, do we have Samuel back on board? Okay, I think Samuel is not there. So what we'll do now is we will move on to our keynote speaker, but I'll pass on to Fanele to take on from here. We will have a question and answer session and contributions as well. You can bring in your contributions towards the end. So please jot down any contributions you have, any questions you might have for all the presentations we've had, and we'll discuss it later. But finally, I think I'll hand over to you and you can introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I hope I'm audible. Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Masinga. I'm from Panelists Group in South Africa. Just before I continue, can I please just inquire on whether or not Peter has already presented? Or we'll just jump onto the keynote speaker.
Okay, just to come in on that, Peter is going to come after the keynote speaker. So you can go ahead with the keynote speaker.
Okay, great, that's fine. Sorry for that disruption.
Okay, we can proceed, yes.
Okay, so as we all know, we're moving very quickly into a new phase in the global economy where items and goods and services are really hyperinflated. And we then need to find alternative and effective ways to cope and adapt to the new phase. For the older generation, it might be, you know, a situation that they've lived through before. But for some of us, especially the millennials, some of us are, you know, haven't really experienced this to a greater extent. So we then need to understand what does this hyperinflation mean to us, and how can we then put ourselves in a position where we are able to be resilient. And then the most pressing issue and the most pressing question is, how do we then cope and adapt to this hyperinflated economy? Is it through financial knowledge that we need to gain? And what does this financial knowledge mean? Does this mean that we need to go out and find out how we need to spend our money, how we need to save, how we need to even borrow? Is there a certain way of borrowing money that is beneficial to us versus borrowing money that is beneficial to the banks, for an example? So we need to be really cognizant of all these financial knowledge models that exist and how these models can actually be of benefit to us. And also with adopting and coping to this hyperinflated economy, does this also then mean we need to learn new skills outside of the different skills that we already have in our different fields? Is there new knowledge that we need to know about the global economy in itself? And what are these skills that we need to know that will catapult us into a better position in order for us to adapt and cope in this new in this economy? So does this mean now in order to diversify our incomes, we need to now then merge into other streams of income? What does that mean? What other streams of incomes are available for us out there to explore? Does this then mean we can no longer have a one linear way of thinking? We should then think outside the box. There's no longer the situation that we should be confined in a box, and we shouldn't even think about thinking outside the box. In fact, we should completely remove the box altogether, because if you think outside the box, you have a limitation of thinking around the parameters of the box, which also confines you. So rather altogether remove the box. So I'm thinking that perhaps we need to then come to an understanding that we need to be versatile thinkers. And I think that's really important, to be very, very versatile and to cultivate new ways of thinking in order to adapt and be resilient in this new economy. And this is just something that every one of us as the millennials in this millennial dialogue that we all need to really look into and further ask ourselves these different questions as to how we can adapt, how we can cope, how we can become resilient, and what instruments and models and that are available out there to help us cope. Because as Pamela said earlier on, as much as there's a crisis, the crisis also does bring opportunity for one to evolve and to adapt and to be better off in this dire situation. In light of that, our keynote speaker today is Mr. Godsaviour Christopher. He is from Tanzania. He's currently a PhD candidate at the University of Agder, I hope I've pronounced it correctly, in Norway. He's a researcher and a trainer by profession. He works with the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania and the Center for Banking and Financial Services, CBFS, and the Center for Research in Social Enterprises and Microfinance in Norway. He's highly interested in financial literacy and inclusion. He believes in financial literacy is a powerful tool for financial inclusion. He will be speaking to us on the theme, the African youth breaking barriers in a hyper-inflated economy. Over to you, Mr. Godsaviour. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Ms. Ruthie Mukole and Pamela Chikoore and everyone in the list. The protocol is observed. My name is Godsaviour. Maybe I can share a video because I'm participating in this. So my name is Godsaviour. Okay, I have some problem here, but my name is Godsaviour. I'm a PhD candidate from at University of Agder in Norway, but I'm also working with University of Dar es Salaam Business School and at the Center for Banking and Financial Services Research, and also a research center for microfinance in Norway. So I'm so grateful for being a keynote speaker in this particular dialogue, and I would like to share some insights and allow me to share my screen.
Thank you.
Allow me to share my screen. I prepared some PowerPoints for this. So okay, so we are going to discuss about the African youth breaking barriers in hyper-inflated economy. So basically, I try to look at the global perspectives and then come down to Africa and what is really happening to this particular continent. So if you look at the global population, you can see that the annual growth rate of 1.2 for the past 10 years have been experienced. And as we talk now, by 2020, the statistics that I have, we had about 7.8 billion people on this planet. So this actually brings us down to see what is happening in Africa. So if you look at Africa, it is somehow interesting because the annual growth rate of this particular population is almost 2 times the global growth rate, which is 2.5, while if you look at the global global population growth rate is 1.2. So what does this tell us about Africa? Africa is one of the population in Africa is growing at a very high rate as compared to the global growth rate for the past 10 years. And currently, by the statistic that I have is by 2020, we have about 1.35 billion people who are living in Africa. So if we come down and look at the structure of the population that we have in Africa, we can see that 16.7 percent of the total world population is coming from Africa, which is making a very large share compared to any other continent. So we have, basically we are taking number 2 by the population size. And then looking at the population, we can see that 43.8% of the population is in urban area. So the remaining percent is in the rural area where they have infrastructure problem, they don't have electricity sometimes, they have poor financial inclusivity, and some other many barriers. And looking at the age of this particular continent, we can see that the median age in Africa is 19.7 years. That means more than 50% of the population are youth. So we are talking about young people making more than 50% of the total population in Africa. Then I had to come down and look at what is happening. So with more than 60% of its population, they are under the age of 25. Then specifically looking at the sub-Saharan Africa, it is the world youngest region by now. So the youngest, the large percent of the young people are living in sub-Saharan Africa. And it is expected that by 2030, the sub-Saharan Africa will be a home of more than 1/4. That means more than 33% of the world's under 25 years old population. So that means we have a very huge percent of youth who are going to be in Africa by the year 2030, which is just 7 years from today. So what does this tell us? So coming back to the issue of inflation, why are we interested with looking at the inflation? It is because the inflation affects the economy, and it is one of the macroeconomic variables which is going to influence a lot of microeconomic factors at individual level, household, and the government at large. So we have 53 economies in Africa, and looking at the data that are available from the World Bank, you can see that only 2 economies, that is Sudan and Zimbabwe, they are having a triple-digit inflation, that is more than 100%. So I guess Sudan is having 103, while Zimbabwe is having something like 225%. That is the increase in price. Then the 22 countries are having double digits, that means 10 plus, and the remaining 29 economies having single digits with an average of 6.1%. So the lowest inflation, even in the world, is coming from South Sudan, which is having a negative inflation rate, which is much better for the economy. And this data, these figures are coming from 2021 to 2022 period. So what does this tell us? So if you look at the blue chart, so I have the blue chart here, which gives us the single digit inflation rate. You can see the list of countries and the inflation rate for the period of 2021-2022. And we have the South Sudan, which is having the negative inflation rate here. Then we have another group of countries which are having a double digit, that means 10 and above. And surprisingly, Ghana is now taking the lead. That means it is having more than 30, it is around 40% inflation rate in the country, in the continent. Then we have these 2 economies which are experiencing a 3-digit inflation, which is Sudan, which is having 103%, and Zimbabwe. I guess everybody knows about what happened in Zimbabwe and the effect of this particular high inflation, the hyperinflation rate in the economy, which led them to dollarize the economy. That means they are now using USD as their currency. So this is the general picture that we have from Africa. So we have economies where majority of the population is youth, but also we see that we have economies which are experiencing a very high inflation rate, which is affecting the performance of the economy. So basically, we can see in the past 1 year, like in 2022, this inflation rate is highly influenced by the imported inflation. We have something we call imported inflation. Samuel is back. Okay, so we have an imported inflation because of the price of goods and services that we import from outside of Africa. The price is going very high, especially for the oil importing countries such as Tanzania and other nationals. But also we have the wheat and other products that are coming from Ukraine and Russia. It is causing most of this country to experience, especially this double-digit economy. So this is really affecting the economy of Africa, and the most affected people are the youth, who make the largest percent of the population in these two countries, in this continent. Okay, so why are we now concerned with inflation? It is because the inflation is of major concern because it affects the purchasing power of individuals. Because while we have experienced shocks in the economy, individuals still continue to earn fixed income. So their purchasing power is declining with time due to increasing price levels of goods and services in the economies. But also the other thing is people are making investments because they expect that they are going to earn some returns on this particular investment. But now, as inflation rate is going up and it is affecting the economy, then the returns that we get from investment are becoming less and less valuable as money loses its value because of the purchasing power. So inflation is affecting both the income earners as well as investors who are earning returns on the investment. So now, based on the situation that we have in Africa, so I have tried to highlight some barriers that are facing youth in these economies. And we have some facts. So if you can see from most of these countries, I have tried to do my best in looking at what is happening in many of these countries. You can see that the number of youth that are graduating from university is increasing, not only in Africa, but globally. But now the formal sector of these economies cannot create sufficient opportunities to employ all these graduates given the current situation. So if we don't find a way to expand the formal sector that receives most of these graduates from the universities, we are experiencing a very high rate of unemployment in these hyper-inflated economies. And with technological advancement, we can see some careers are being replaced with artificial intelligence. Things like banking sector, the insurance sector, people are moving into with technology, and human beings are being replaced. So the career, those who have taken their career in banking and other sector, which can easily be occupied or replaced by the artificial intelligence, they are also at risk of losing the employment. So basically, we have a problem. So then unemployment rate is very high in these African countries, and most of the politicians and practitioners, they are arguing that the youth must focus on being self-employed, creating employment instead of waiting for the employment opportunities from the formal sector. But now, what is happening with the claim that politicians are coming with? So, is self-employment feasible solution for this particular problem that we have in Africa? So, the question is, does our education system support youth to have their own employment, like to be self-employed? So speaking of what Gloria from Tanzania has highlighted, And the other key points that we got from the opportunities that arises in the economy, we can see that the education system in most of African countries are not preparing youth to be in a position to employ themselves, to engage themselves in creating some institution, in creating some small and medium enterprises, which can create some employment opportunities in these economies. So there is a problem with education system, and Gloria has addressed this very well. And I guess we got some intakes from her presentation. But another thing is our institutions. We have banks, we have financial institutions, and other legal structures. Are these institutions supporting the self-employment of youth, especially in these high inflated economies? So we have problems of claiming that youth should start their own businesses, run their business fresh from universities. But the problem is now when you approach the financial institution, they require that you must have some experience before getting a loan or before accessing the capital that you need to start this particular small and medium enterprises. So we still have a legal and institutional problem within our countries, which really limits our generation, the population from solving the greatest problem that we are facing in this particular continent. The other thing that we have is the background now. So you find that we are not sticking to the background, but we have our family and society supporting our new enterprises that we are going to generate. You find that someone is newly coming to the market. They don't have any background in running and operating these businesses. And now the education system is not also preparing the youth for running their own businesses. So here we have the problem that Gloria has also spoken on this, because we need to come up with education that change the mindset of the youth, instead of just having the curriculum that are not supporting the self-employment. Because if you focus on the future, we can see that the population is growing at a very high rate, and now the formal sector is not expanding at the same rate. So we have a problem. The number of graduates are expanding, but the job opportunities, the employment opportunities that are available in our economies are somehow constant or changing at a very slow rate. So we really need to think of way forward, breaking the barriers that we are facing. So among other things, if we have to do some kind of initiatives, we have to support the youth-led non-government organization and volunteering, especially in helping these youth being equipped with right knowledge and skills that will help them to start and run their own businesses. But also we have to include youth in making some decisions, because this was also discussed by Anastasse from Rwanda, the inclusivity and diversity. So youth councils, where youth come together and have their common voice in dictating what they are facing and telling the government and whoever is responsible what are they going through, and the solution that they think they will be feasible is very important. But another thing, based on the education system that we have, we really need to have the life skills trainings, and this can be basically through the youth-led non-government organization, which can volunteer in providing this particular training. But skills development in secondary and tertiary education is very important, as Gloria has presented. We need to change the way we teach our children. We need to change the way we treat our youth while in secondary and tertiary education. There is a need to change, because we have seen that there is a problem that is coming up very, very fast, and we need to take action on this. But we argue for the formal sector as well as the private and public sector to provide some internship that will help you gain some experience before going to start their own venture and so forth. But when it comes to access to financial services now, we say youth are limited in terms of accessing capital from financial institutions because of lack of experience, especially running these small and medium enterprises. So we can think of arguing for the special window for youth in financial institutions where they can organize themselves in groups and have access to financial services where the financial institutions are having some special window, like giving them the grace period and whatever in order to support the startups. But now we also have to think of what is happening in the technology. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, and the technology is taking a pace, replacing a lot of careers. So we have also to think about youth concentrating on taking technological advantages. Things like knowledge in computer programming will be of great deal in the future, and we will need to look at this when we are focusing on education. But investment in coding, coming up with different mobile apps and applications which can help to solve the problems that we are facing, will also help us a lot in breaking a lot of barriers that we are currently facing. But there is another use of internet. I guess the access to internet is now at a very good stage, especially in African countries compared to the past. And we have to argue that youth need to use internet to access financial services. Example, we have what we call the crowdfunding, where people come and mobilize resources in order to start up and finance these startups. And also they have several ways of accessing financial markets where they can have access to money. So the use of internet is also very important as it is helping us to break a lot of barriers that we are facing. But another thing that we need to consider is the digital financial inclusion. Youth need to have access to financial services, the diverse financial services that they have to access. Because this, we say financial inclusion is a way, or it is a channel through which we can achieve a lot of the sustainable development goals that are outlined by the United Nations. So this will enhance them to have savings, which can be later on used for financing the startups, but also they will have protection against risk, the insurance service, especially for the startups, because they are very high risk businesses. But there is another digital inclusion through investment. So we have things like blockchain and cryptocurrencies that are coming up. In African continent, we don't have to lag behind when taking these particular opportunities that are arising in the world. But also we have digital and financial inclusion, helping youth to access financial markets. So raising funds, selling equity, especially for these startups, some business angels can be interested with the business ideas. I have heard about the Silicon whatever in Kenya. And most of these ideas are very interesting and they are very innovative. So we can have an access to financial markets where we can get some equity finance, some debt finance, where we can finance our investment and make these ideas come into existence. So I just conclude by saying financial inclusions for better tomorrow, and thank you very much for listening. And that is what I prepared for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Godsaviour. Just a question from my side is, how do we start looking at inclusion of persons with disabilities? Because I feel like most of the times when conversations are made, they often really don't, talk much to them, as much as so many platforms for us to, adopt to or evolve into. Have we considered maybe the barriers that, they might encounter? If so, how can we look into that?
Okay, thanks for the question. I guess the people with disability, especially their access to financial services. We have several ways where we can include them in the financial system. Take an example of people who have physical disability, they cannot work through financial institution. Nowadays, we have the digital inclusion, which it is really helping us to access the access to financial services from wherever we are. So it is very few times nowadays we go to these financial institution, banks or insurance companies or their pension funds and follow up on anything. We do everything online. So the technology is also playing an important role in ensuring that even people with disability are having access to financial services. So we think we have to think of a way of coming up with digital inclusion where we can also consider the marginalized group.
Yes, so specifically looking also at cognitive disabilities, because online inclusion generally means that everyone will have access to online services, but doesn't really take into account people who have challenges with maneuvering social digital platforms. And so if someone has cognitive issues, how do they become included?
Okay, so now that is another issue. So we really need to make sure that we provide financial literacy to these groups, because the access is one thing, but now once we have a supply of these digital services, the issue is people using it. And the problem is people are not using these digital services because they don't know how to utilize the digital platforms that are provided by financial institutions. So basically, the important thing is financial inclusion, which Gloria has also spoken about. We have to think of including financial literacy programs in the lower level education, especially in African countries, because we are lagging behind in terms of financial inclusion when we look at all the indicators that we use to measure financial inclusion. So financial literacy can help us area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you can go ahead, Pamela.
Okay, no, finally, did you have other contributions? I was thinking maybe we can move to the question and answer session.
I'm back already.
Okay, hello, Samuel. Good to have you back.
Yeah, hope you guys are fine as well. I want to apologize for issues, with network.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine, Samuel. Maybe what I can do before we get into the question and answer session is then just give you maybe 5 minutes to go through your presentation. I think I just highlighted the question, but maybe I can it's just basically on peace and security. How influential can young people be in contributing to the peace and security in their country? And you can just take us through that briefly for 5 minutes, and then we can get in the question and answer session. Is that fine?
Sure.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, I want to start by appreciating, Peter and the entire team for this amazing session we had this time around. And straight to the point, the first thing I want to say is that how young people, can also have influence in ensuring peace and security within their communities is by, them trying to ensure that they participate first in local, governance. Youth participation in local governance is very critical and essential, in maintaining peace and also fostering security. Oftentimes, young people tend to, act the way they do, sometimes in a very hostile, violent. This often comes as a result of retaliation towards the elderly, ones in power, not giving opportunity for youth to also engage. But then we are instead saying that young people should also take the bull by the horn, like the Quakers, but also seeing when need be, when time is near or it's due, for them to also, show interest and participate. It could be municipal councillors and whatsoever, so that it's not understanding how things function at the very micro level. So youth participation, in local governance is one of the first things that young people must do to also influence peace and security. The second is youth participation in electoral and democratic processes. This is at the level of national parliamentarians, members of Senate and so on, the presidential elections. So youth can also ensure that peace and security reigns within their country when they're able to vote. Voting, no matter how we can always say they can re-election, this and that, but if majority young people come out, have their voters card, go and vote, things can change. So young people must also try to participate in electoral and democratic processes, because this is where power is being decided. With who are we voting to, lead us within this time frame? Because a good leader will also want to work towards the interests of the people in the community and the country. So if we see that is the case, then we'll be enjoying peace and security. The next point I want to say is that youth must embrace and promote diversity and multiculturalism. It's very vital. Diversity and multiculturalism is very essential, as primordial, we must all note. Because youth, even for example, Cameroon, we are having almost 230 ethnic groups or tribes. So you can imagine, if we are not able to embrace diversity and multiculturalism, we have the English-speaking regions, the French, and we have different tribes. So peace and security cannot come if we as young people, we don't embrace diversity and multiculturalism. It's very important. The next, I will not belabor that. I think those of us following will understand more. The next is that young people must embark on creative and innovative entrepreneurship. Creative and innovative entrepreneurship. We are in an era where we must think beyond the box, because sometimes systems have been put in place by government. It might not be in our favor as young people. In the 21st century, we love IT and a lot of things. We have to create, we have to innovate things that can be in favor of us. You must work with the government. Most of us here have different initiatives. Those of us who are privileged to work with the government, fine. But we must always try to see how we can come up with something that will get us busy and also adding value to the society. So I'm encouraging young people within Africa that they must embark on creative and innovative entrepreneurship. Now, I will not further expand on that. I think it's very clear. The next point is that building and strengthening social advocacy and development network. For us to enjoy peace and security within our countries, we must have network. For example, this platform we have in African Millennials Dialogue, this is kind of like a network. Now, it gives us the opportunity to share issues concerned within the continent. So if within our countries as well, we are able to build and strengthen social network that advocates and also advance development, then we are good to go. Because you cannot take lead in governance, you can only advocate for good governance practices by what you're also doing as a network. Development is your actions you take in and ensuring that things move better. So I believe that young people should not just be complaining, but taking action by being innovative and creative, as well as also building network. Because people, the government, bodies, international bodies will listen more when people work together. Like Addison was saying the other day, that after this conversation, what can we put forward to share with AU and other agencies so that they can start putting them also in policy? Now, another point I want to highlight is that youth must also try to participate in the decision-making and policy-making processes. Now, I'm in the domain of peace. I'm a peace expert by profession, In my country, in Cameroon, before the national dialogue, for example, with the crisis going on in 2019, I was invited by the Foreign Affairs to be part of the 5-man delegation for consultation with the Common Secretariat on the peace process. And in 2022, I was also invited to join the Common Secretariat on an interministerial discussion on developing policy document on countering violent extremism in Cameroon. So to mention a few. Now, these are just to say that us young people, first, we must be able to carve a niche for ourselves, be competent, be right network in our area of interest, then we can have a voice and platforms where advocacy can be strengthened, policy be taking place, then we'll enjoy peace and security. So on that note, I will not, go due to time, I will not really elaborate, but this point I've highlighted, if we digest them, I think is very, very important for us. I'm open for any question for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Samuel, for that. I think your points were direct. None of us can question what you were direct, what you're telling us needs to be done. And I think those are the sort of points that we sort of need going forward, because we've got to have something tangible that we're putting down and we're saying, this is the course of action that needs to be taken. So thank you so much for that. It was very insightful. What I will do now is I will go to the questions and then maybe find out, I'll just choose one of the speakers to probably answer some of the questions that come through. There's a question that has been posed to us by Valentino. Valentino, thank you so much for joining us. It's been good having you. You've raised the question, and I'll just read the question. He says, without the population being financially aware and financially literate, is financial inclusion a good economic development tool, or is it just financial product providers? Is it just a financial product provider tool that can or will, if it doesn't have proper governance, add to the current problems versus being a solution? So I think I'll pose this one to our keynote speaker, Godsaviour. I don't know if you'd like to answer that question that has been posed by Valentino. Basically, how do we balance out the issue of financial inclusion when people are not financially aware and are not financially literate? How do we balance that out? You can unmute and answer it for us, sir.
Okay, thanks, Pamela. Okay, so the questions, financial inclusion, without the population being financially aware and financially literate, is financial inclusion a good economic development tool, or is just a financial product provider's marketing tool that can to the business solution? Okay, so we know that the financial inclusion is a channel through which we can achieve the economic development, because people tend to build saving. They have a safe way of making investment, which in turn lead to more enterprises within the economy because of the savings and investments. And this will later on translate into employment opportunities because of these new ventures that are coming up in the economy, which will translate to economic development. But now the problem is financial inclusion is a very complex issue, especially when it is brought to someone who is illiterate. So without financial literacy and financial awareness programs, it is very difficult for us to use financial inclusion as a tool to fight against poverty, especially in African countries, because people, they don't know why they should save, where they can have access to loans or fund that they can utilize in starting up their businesses. But also another issue is even the way of investing, they are not aware of how to make investment, which in turn will bring another problem rather than solving the current problem that we are facing. So financial literacy and financial awareness programs are very important, more than financial inclusion itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we really need to be looking at awareness and literacy and inclusion, and not look at them separately, but look at them together, because I think one cannot go without the other. I have another question that's here that Valentina has also posed. I'll give this one to Gloria. He's basically, when we start talking about education, what role do universities play when we start talking about awareness and literacy? How can we utilize universities? I know something is happening in Ghana where there's a partnership with media houses and universities. But in terms of education, how can we utilize the institutions that we have to raise awareness, maybe not just on financial literacy, but basically on a lot of issues that we spoke about tonight? How do those institutions come into play? Is Gloria still here?
Oh, yes, I'm here. I thought that question was for Godsaviour, but all right.
Okay.
Well, so a lot has been said, and before saying anything, I would like to loudly congratulate Godsaviour for a very wonderful composed presentation. And as I said some days back in the group, that I think we should find ways where these comments can be sent to Africa Union or East Africa Community for them to see what young people are really discussing and what we really want to see. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Godsaviour will be in the position of saying a lot about this because he is directly from a higher learning institution. But as a practitioner, what I see is that universities are trying to bring the changes we are aspiring. But I'm not sure if they are doing to the extent that we want to see. So again, as I said before, a lot has to be done because still it is the same course outlines that they are using, the same, the same curriculum, the same books. If you look at secondary schools, books that I have used when I was in primary schools are the books that the students in primary schools now are using. So they are trying to do some changes, but not to the extent that we want to see. So a lot has to be done in terms of integrating the higher learning institution and all other stakeholders in the sector to implement the changes, to act, not speaking, acting. So I think we are still lagging behind. I will allow Godsaviour to say something since he is from a higher learning institution and he can tell what his university is really doing on this.
Okay, Gloria, thanks for the comments. Then picking from where you pointed the discussion back to me, I guess most of the universities are still using the outdated curriculum. That's why if you look at Tanzania, the largest university in Tanzania is University of Dar es Salaam, but I'm wondering what is really happening because after the graduation, they have to go out to all regions in Tanzania and start teaching the graduates about entrepreneurship, something which could just be included in the curriculum and save the government funds that we are utilizing in carrying out these particular programs. But initially, this month, we are going to have an evaluation program where we will be going to all our graduates for the past 10 years to collect like their views about what we need to change, because now they have been in the job market for some time. So we are going to get some comments, so some evaluation of our programs and what we really to change, so that we can accommodate the changes within our curriculum in order to improve the performance of our graduates. So universities, yes, they are trying to take their responsibilities, but for now, I see we still have a problem because our graduates are not fitting the job market requirements. So we need to come back to them, equip them with some knowledges which are important, and then we let them go. But if we finish this tracer study that we are trying to do, Then we will have some important comments that are going to help us in improving the curriculum, the course outline, and the content that we have to cover while they are in university for 3 years or 4 years or 5. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Godsaviour. Thank you, Gloria, as well. Thank you so much for that input. I think it's very, very helpful. It's giving us, as Gloria highlighted, we need to take this a step further. It can't just be a discussion we have here. It has to be something we hand over to others. So there are many points that we've been given, and just a bit of homework for all of us that are here. We have discussed. I would encourage us to just put down some notable notes you got from here, the key, the goals that you think we need to be focusing on as we go ahead, and let's share them post this meeting so that we can have something together that something that we put together. Jot down what you think we need to focus on, and let's put it down and let's share it with the people out there that we think will listen to us, so that it's just not any other meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you once again, Godsaviour, for the amazing keynote address. Thank you to all our panelists. What I'll do at this point is I'm going to call upon Peter to give us a call to action and our closing remarks. So Peter, if you're there, you can unmute. We are ready to hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great, thank you very much. Let me thank all the speakers for the amazing presentation. From the panelists, Gloria, Anastasse, Samuel, and to our keynote speaker, that was an insightful presentation. And so today I've been a bit slow. Ghana has lost to Uruguay in the World Cup, and so yes. But on the call to action, I will start by saying we have a growing population, and being the youngest continent in the world, Africa has enjoyed consistent economic growth over the years, and so aims at becoming a place where business opportunities are bound to thrive in the future. And so I strongly believe we, the young population, is expected to make these important steps happen, to see an Africa where our economies are growing, and we cannot solve the challenges in Africa without integrating the youth in its long-term development. And just recently, the World Bank released a report, and they mentioned that while many African economies have registered impressive economic growth in recent years, poverty levels across the region have not fallen as much as expected, and young people looking for better paying jobs have been at a great disadvantage. They also made emphasis on the fact that there is lack of inclusion with regards to bringing young people on board, just like Samuel shared. And so, and in that same report, they gave out 3 policies that can help young people, or that can integrate young people in economic development. And the first recommendation they made was, for a successful youth policy, we require working across many sectors to develop one holistic and intersectorial strategy with clear priorities and measures for concrete action. And so I was happy when Pamela was asking the panelists, what one recommendation will you give to the leaders of our economies to implement? And Gloria was talking about education, the fact that we need to practicalize our educational system. And Anastasse was also talking about the fact that there should be gender equality. The second recommendation they gave in their report was the fact that youth policies fail because young people's voices are not included in the design and implementation of the policies that affect them. And so we, the young people, we want our voices to be heard. We want leaders of our economies to include us. And so if we are developing a policy for young people, then we need young people to be involved. As I was happy when Samuel shared that he was called upon to participate in some of the dialogue that was happening in his country. And then the third recommendation they made was achieving success in youth policy is challenged by the fact that there are few success stories and examples of best practices. And so we don't have much in terms of the young people breaking barriers. And so if we get support and we are able to break barriers, that will motivate other young people to also take action in helping develop the economy. And so it will be unacceptable to leave the young people behind in development. Booming economic growth meant that the majority of young people are now better able to participate productively in our society. And so if we want to boom our economy, if we want to develop our economy, then we need more participation from young people, because Africa has the largest population of young people. And so if we want to develop Africa, then we need to give opportunity to young people to help in developing the continent. There is no great need to think negatively of African development, although the future will still be affected by the ongoing challenges that we are facing. If Africa aims to move ahead and enjoy the benefits of economic growth, it will be needful to include its young population. And so widening the economic and social gap should be a great concern to our leaders. If we want to reduce poverty, if we want to strike gender equality, if we want to improve on education, if we want good health, if we want to get adequate housing, then we need young people to be taken or to be given advantage in some of these areas. A large and a growing young population can be a driver for economic growth and social progress, provided they access quality education and healthcare. They are engaged in decent employment, without which many young people will not be able to escape negative social biases and poverty. It is difficult to speak of a changing Africa prospects at all levels of society without dwelling on the importance of young people in the equation. From this standpoint, it is clear that the future of Africa is dependent on placing young people as the catalyst for its development. And so education, skills training, and government support will be of immense value to this growing development. Henceforth, more than ever before, African governments have the power to adopt and implement the right solution to unlock the potential of its youth. We call for a strong commitment combined with strategic partnership. We believe this will make a huge difference at all levels. Governments of African countries should be open, they should collaborate, and they should invest in young people. For instance, my organization and our strategic partners are championing the improving financial awareness and financial literacy movement in Africa. And we believe this will be a catalyst for economic development and poverty eradication. And so central banks of African countries can adopt this strategy and help raise citizens in their various countries who will be financially empowered to create wealth for themselves and their generation. We must all strive to build not only relevant and resilient skills development system, but also equip the youth, the young people, with the skills
Hello.
Peter is
Is
muted.
Peter there?
Hello, can you hear me?
I think, yes, we can hear you now, Peter. You can go ahead.
Yes, so in conclusion, I will say that Africa is rising, and with support and collaboration from government, young people in Africa will do exploits. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you very much for that. I think we'll need that in writing so that we can take it forward. But yes, a call to action indeed, a call for us to do more than just talk, for us to make a difference and for us to come around the table again next year and to have something tangible and to be progressive in terms of what we're speaking about and what we're undertaking to do. I think on that note, we are ready to close the meeting for tonight. For some people, it's still the afternoon or the morning. The speakers have already been thanked, but I don't think we can thank them enough. Thank you so much for coming forth and speaking to us and sharing your expertise, your minds, your ideas. Continue to do the work that you're doing. Continue to push forward what you're pushing forward. If we all do our part, we'll make a difference. So let's not tire. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but if we all focus, we will get there. So thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, for organizing this. Thank you, Valentino. Thank you, Panele, for being the co-moderator tonight. You made the job a lot easier. Thank you to our panelists. I would like to say on this note, thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead. Let's do what needs to be done. As I said, we do have homework. Let's put down the points we want to include in our statement of undertaking, because we would want to come up with a report and a statement of undertaking. So let's share our ideas on that statement of undertaking, and then we'll share it with the people that are in those positions to make a difference. So let's share those. I think Peter is positioned to receive those ideas, and within the next week or so, let's share those ideas. We'll come up with the statement of undertakings and the report, share it with everyone, and take it out there. We've got to see a difference on the ground for the sake of the young people that are waiting for us to take action. So thank you so much. Have a good evening. And to Peter, there's always hope for Ghana next time. Don't lose heart. We keep going. So have a good night, everyone, or have a good afternoon. Thank you so much. Join us again on the 4th edition, because the dialogue will continue to go on. So thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you and bye-bye. Bye-bye,
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.